At the barbecue, my husband joked, "Who wants to trade my wife? She's low maintenance but cooks and cleans like a servant." His recently divorced uncle smirked and said, "I'll take her." My husband's smile vanished when the neighbor added, "So, when should I pick her up?" The burger flipped and my hand dropped onto the grill with a wet slap. Around me, the backyard went silent except for the hiss of meat juices hitting hot coals. 7 faces turned toward my husband Derek, who stood by the cooler with a beer halfway to his lips, his expression frozen somewhere between confusion and dawning horror. "I'm serious," Marcus said. Our neighbor leaned against the fence, arms crossed, his gray eyes steady on Derek's face. "Name your price. When can I pick her up?" Derek's uncle Ralph let out a wheezing laugh that died quickly when nobody joined in. His second wife had left him 3 months ago, taking half of everything and his dignity. He'd shown up to our Memorial Day cookout in cargo shorts and a stained polo, smelling like he'd marinated in whiskey. "Come on, man," Derek said, forcing out a chuckle. "It was just a joke." "Was it?" Marcus didn't smile. He'd moved in next door 8 months ago, always polite, always kept to himself. I'd helped him choose paint colors for his kitchen. We talked about his divorce, about starting over at 43. "Because if you're serious about trading her away like she's a used car, I'm making an offer." My hands had gone numb. The spatula clattered onto the grill grates. Derek's face flushed red. "Dude, what's your problem?" "My problem?" Marcus straightened. "My problem is listening to you spend the last hour talking about your wife like she's a household appliance. She's so easy, she never complains, she just does everything I want." He mimicked Derek's voice with cruel accuracy. "You listed her qualities like you were selling a dishwasher. So I'm interested. How much?" "This is insane." Derek looked around at his friends, at his co-workers from the insurance firm, at his uncle. Nobody met his eyes. His buddy Jason studied his beer label. Tim and Shannon, the couple from Derek's softball league, had suddenly become fascinated by their phones. I should have said something. I should have laughed it off, diffused the tension, played the role I'd perfected over 8 years of marriage. Good-natured Emma, who rolled with the jokes, who never made scenes, who kept everything smooth. Instead, I walked over to the patio table and picked up my phone. "Emma." Derek's voice had that edge it got when I did something unexpected. "Come on, baby. Marcus is just being weird. Tell him, I'm calling my sister," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "She's a real estate agent. I need to know what our house is worth." The backyard erupted. Jason started toward Derek. Tim grabbed Shannon's hand. Ralph mumbled something about needing to leave. But I kept my eyes on Derek, watching recognition spread across his features like spilled wine on white carpet. "You can't be serious," he said. Neither could you, apparently. I pressed dial. But here we are. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm writing this from my sister Claire's guest room, where I've been staying since I walked out of the cookout, left Derek standing in our backyard, and didn't come back. The house is in both our names, but I haven't returned once. Claire drove over the next day with her husband and helped me pack while Derek was at work. He didn't believe I was serious until he came home to empty closets. The phone calls started immediately. Texts, voicemails, emails. At first, he was angry. How dare I embarrass him in front of his friends? How dare I overreact to a harmless joke? Then he shifted to confused. Where was this coming from? We'd been fine. Happy, even. Hadn't we? Then came the bargaining. He was sorry. He didn't mean it. Everyone makes mistakes. We could work through this. I didn't respond to any of it. What I did instead was start going through our finances. 8 years of marriage meant 8 years of joint accounts, shared credit cards, co-signed loans. I'd always handled the bills, balanced the checkbooks, managed the budgets. Derek called it one of my wife's skills, said he was lucky to have someone so organized. Turned out, organization was more valuable than he'd realized. The first thing I found was the gym membership. Derek had canceled his Planet Fitness membership 2 years ago, said he'd rather run outside. But there was still a charge every month to some place called Elite Athletic Club. $300, regular as clockwork. I called them. They couldn't give me details about his membership, but they confirmed he had one. They also mentioned, very professionally, that they were a full-service facility with private training rooms available for hourly rental. I sat with that information for 2 days before I kept digging. The credit card statements showed a pattern. Lunch meetings at the same restaurant, always on Thursdays, always charged to his personal card instead of the company one he used for actual business lunches. Coffee shops I'd never heard him mention. A jewelry purchase last Valentine's Day for $200 more than the earrings he'd given me. I made spreadsheets. I took screenshots. I documented everything with the same meticulous attention I'd given to our household budget, our meal planning, our social calendar. All those skills Derek had joked about, all those qualities that made me low maintenance, I turned them into weapons. Then I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Emma, are you okay?" "I need help," I said. "You offered to buy me at the cookout. I have a counteroffer." We met at a coffee shop the next morning. Marcus arrived in business casual, a leather portfolio under one arm. When he sat down across from me, his expression was serious. "Before you say anything," he started, "I need to apologize for that scene. I was out of line. Your marriage isn't my business, and I shouldn't have." "He's cheating on me," I interrupted. Marcus stopped. Blinked. "What?" I slid my phone across the table. "I found the evidence after I moved out. I have credit card statements, location data from our shared phone plan, receipts. I have everything except photos, but I can get those too if I need them." He scrolled through the documents I'd compiled, his jaw tightening. "Emma, I don't know what to say." "You're a corporate lawyer," I said. "That's what you told me when you moved in. You work in contract negotiation." "Family law isn't my specialty. I don't need family law. I need someone who knows how to find leverage." I met his eyes. "Derek works in insurance. His company has a morality clause in their employment contracts." I checked. Any behavior that could damage the company's reputation or create liability concerns can be grounds for termination. That includes affairs, especially if they involve company resources. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You want to cost him his job." "I want what I'm owed." My voice came out harder than I'd intended. 8 years. I put him through his licensing exams. I managed every aspect of our home life so he could focus on his career. I gave up a promotion that would have required relocation because he didn't want to move. I've been the perfect wife, Marcus. The one who never complains, who never demands, who just makes everything easy. And he treated you like property. He treated me like something he owned that he could joke about discarding. I took a breath. I want half of everything we built together. I want a clean divorce with no fighting. And I want him to understand exactly what he lost. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "I know someone who specializes in divorce cases with complicating factors. She's aggressive, thorough, and she doesn't lose. Can I give her your number?" "Yes." He typed something, sent it. "One question, though. What was that comment at the cookout about me picking you up? You knew I'd react that way." I had the grace to look embarrassed. "I saw you last week when I was coming back from the grocery store. You were standing in your driveway on the phone, and you were crying. I heard you say something about how your ex-wife used to introduce you as her husband like it was an insult. And you put it together. I thought maybe you'd understand what it feels like to be treated as less than." I folded my hands on the table. "I wasn't trying to manipulate you. But when Derek said what he said, when Ralph laughed, I saw your face. You looked like someone had punched you." "Because they had." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My ex used to do the same thing. Make jokes at my expense, belittle me in front of her friends. When I finally called her on it, she said I was too sensitive. That I couldn't take a joke." Derek said the same thing in his voicemails. "They always do." Marcus stood. "Give Valerie, that's my contact, 24 hours. She'll call you. In the meantime, don't respond to Derek. Don't engage. Keep documenting everything." I nodded. He started to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, you deserve better than this. Better than him. Better than what you've been accepting." He hesitated. And I didn't need to be asked. I would have helped anyway. After he left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Derek, to hear his voice, to fall back into the familiar patterns of our life together. 8 years was a long time. We had history, shared memories, inside jokes. We had a house, mutual friends, a life I built with careful attention. But every time I almost dialed, I remembered the sound of Ralph's laugh. The way Derek's friends had stayed silent. The casual cruelty of being discussed like an object, a thing to be traded or sold or discarded. I put the phone away and drove back to Claire's house. Update 1. Valerie called me 6 hours later. She was exactly what Marcus had promised: efficient, direct, and completely uninterested in my feelings about the situation. She wanted facts, documentation, timelines. She asked questions I hadn't considered. Did Derek have any business partnerships? Investment accounts I didn't know about? Property in his name only? I didn't have answers to everything, but I promised to find them. Here's what's going to happen, she said after 45 minutes of interrogation. I'm going to file for divorce on grounds of irretrievable breakdown. In this state, that doesn't require proof of fault, but the evidence of infidelity strengthens your position for asset division. We're going to request a forensic accounting of all marital assets. If he's been hiding money, we'll find it. What about his job? That's your choice. The morality clause gives you leverage, but using it could backfire. If he loses his income, he has less to give you in the divorce. I hadn't considered that. So I just let him get away with it? I didn't say that. I said it's your choice. Some of my clients want financial compensation. Others want consequences. You needed to decide what matters more to you. She paused. But Emma? From what Marcus told me, from what I'm seeing in these documents you sent, this man has been disrespecting you for a long time. This wasn't one joke. This was a pattern. She was right. I'd been so focused on the cookout, on that one moment of public humiliation, that I'd almost missed the larger picture. The jokes about my cooking when we had company over, always phrased as compliments but with an edge that made me smaller. The way he'd introduce me to his colleagues as the woman who keeps me in line, with a wink that suggested I was a burden he tolerated. The time he told our marriage counselor, we've gone twice, 2 years ago, before I convinced myself we didn't need it, that I was perfect except when she gets emotional about nothing. I'd spent 8 years believing I was overreacting, being too sensitive, failing to take a joke. And he'd spent 8 years training me to doubt myself. I want consequences, I told Valerie. Then we'll make sure he faces them. The divorce papers were served 3 days later. Derek showed up at Claire's house that evening, pounding on the door, demanding to see me. Claire's husband Steve answered and told him to leave or he'd call the police. Derek left, but the calls intensified. I listened to one voicemail. Just one. Emma, come on. This is crazy. We can fix this. I love you. You're my wife. You're everything to me. Please, can we just talk? Can we figure this out like adults? I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. I deleted it and blocked his number. What I did instead was call the Elite Athletic Club and ask if they had security cameras in their parking lot. They did. I asked if they kept footage. They did, for 90 days. I asked if they could pull footage from specific dates and times if subpoenaed. The woman on the phone got very quiet. Then she said, "Ma'am, I can't help you with that. But if you have a lawyer, they should contact our corporate office." I passed the information to Valerie. 2 weeks into the separation, Derek's uncle Ralph called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Emma, honey?" He sounded sober, which was unusual. "I need to apologize for what I said at the cookout. I was drunk and stupid, and I made things worse. I'm sorry." "Okay," I said. "Derek's a mess. He's not eating, not sleeping. He's telling everyone you left him for no reason, that you went crazy out of nowhere. Is that what he thinks happened?" "I don't know what he thinks. But I know what I saw." Ralph cleared his throat. "My second wife, Linda, she left me because I treated her like garbage. Made jokes about her weight, her cooking, her family. I thought I was being funny. I thought she knew I loved her. But you can't treat someone like they're worthless and then expect them to believe you care." I didn't know what to say to that. "Derek's telling you he'll change," Ralph continued. "Maybe he will. People can. But Emma, if you take him back, make sure he's changing for himself, not just to get you back. Because the minute he feels safe again, he'll go right back to who he was. Thank you for calling," I said quietly. "One more thing. That neighbor of yours, Marcus? He came to see me last week. Asked me if I'd be willing to testify about what Derek said at the cookout. Said it might be useful in the divorce." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" I told him the truth. Derek said a lot of things that day. The trade wife comment was just the worst of it. He exhaled slowly. "I'm done protecting men who don't deserve it. Even if he's my nephew." After we hung up, I sat on Claire's back porch and cried for the first time since I'd left. Not because I missed Derek, but because Ralph was right. I'd spent 8 years making excuses, minimizing, convincing myself that love meant accepting less than I deserved. The next morning, Valerie called with news. The forensic accountant had found something. Derek had been siphoning money from our joint savings account into a separate account I hadn't known existed. Not a lot at once, 100 here, 200 there, but over 3 years, he'd moved nearly $30,000. The account was in his name only, at a different bank. Can he do that? I asked. It's joint money. Technically, yes. Joint accounts mean both parties can withdraw. But intent matters. If he was hiding assets in anticipation of divorce, that's fraud. If he was just setting aside money without telling you, it's still relevant to asset division. Valerie's voice held grim satisfaction. Either way, it proves he's not the innocent party he's claiming to be. What about the affair? The gym is cooperating with the subpoena. We'll have the security footage by end of week. But Emma, there's something else. His company's HR department reached out to me. My pulse quickened. Why? Apparently someone filed an anonymous complaint about Derek's conduct. Cited the morality clause, mentioned potential misuse of company resources, suggested they investigate his expense reports. I didn't. I know you didn't. But someone did. And now his employer is asking questions. She paused. Do you know who it might have been? I thought about Marcus. About his offer to help, his quiet intensity at the coffee shop. About the fact that Derek had humiliated me in front of him, a corporate lawyer who understood exactly how contracts and clauses worked. I have an idea, I said. Well, whoever it was, they did you a favor. Derek's scrambling now. His lawyer called this morning wanting to negotiate. Already? Facing a messy divorce, a potential job loss, and documented evidence of infidelity and financial dishonesty? Yeah. He's motivated. Valerie's tone shifted. So here's my advice. We have leverage. We can push for everything we want. But you need to decide what that is. Do you want the maximum financial settlement? Do you want him to face professional consequences? Do you want to drag this out to make him suffer, or do you want it over quickly? I thought about Ralph's words. About patterns and choices and the difference between justice and revenge. I want what's fair, I said finally. I want half of everything, including that hidden account. I want him to acknowledge what he did wrong, in writing, as part of the settlement. And I want to walk away clean, no strings, no shared assets, no reasons to ever speak to him again. And his job? That's between him and his employer. If he violated company policy, he should face consequences. But I'm not going to actively pursue it. I took a breath. I just want to be done. Then let's get you done. The negotiation took 3 weeks. Derek's lawyer tried to argue that I was being vindictive, that the divorce was my choice and therefore I should accept less. Valerie destroyed that argument with one email containing the credit card statements, the gym membership records, and a detailed timeline of Derek's affair. The woman's name was Jessica. She worked at his office, in a different department. They'd been involved for 18 months. The jewelry he'd bought last Valentine's Day? He'd given it to her, not me. The work trips he'd taken over the past year? 3 of them were weekends away with her. Learning her name made it real in a way the evidence hadn't. Jessica. I looked her up on social media, though Valerie advised against it. She was 26, blonde, with a bright smile in every photo. Pictures of brunches and beach trips, cocktails with friends, gym selfies. She looked happy. Uncomplicated. Everything I'd apparently stopped being somewhere along the way. I closed the browser and didn't look again. The gym footage arrived on a Thursday. Valerie called to warn me before she sent it over. You don't have to watch this, she said. I have everything I need for the case. Looking at it will only hurt you. Send it anyway, I told her. I watched it alone in Claire's guest room, my laptop balanced on my knees. The timestamp showed a Tuesday afternoon in March, about 6 months ago. Derek's car pulled into the lot at 2:47 p.m. He got out, checked his phone, walked toward the entrance. 3 minutes later, a silver sedan parked 2 spaces away. Jessica emerged wearing yoga pants and a tank top, her gym bag slung over one shoulder. They didn't kiss in the parking lot. They barely looked at each other. But I saw the way Derek held the door for her, the familiar gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. The way his hand brushed her lower back as she passed. The smile he gave her, genuine and warm, nothing like the distracted nods he'd been giving me for months. They disappeared inside. The footage jumped forward, the system only kept clips when motion was detected. At 4:23 p.m., they came out separately. Jessica first, Her hair damp, different clothes. Derek 10 minutes later, his gym bag in hand, checking his phone again. He'd come home that day around 6. I remembered because I'd made his favorite dinner, pot roast with roasted vegetables. He'd kissed my cheek, said something about a tough day at the office, asked if I minded if he ate in front of the television. He'd seemed distracted. Tired. I cleared the dishes alone, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. Then I'd sat beside him on the couch while he watched a basketball game, my hand on his knee, feeling the distance between us like a physical thing I couldn't name. I closed the laptop. Sat in the dark for a while. Then I called Claire. "Can you come get me?" My voice came out small. "I need to not be alone right now." She was there in 15 minutes. The discovery process unearthed more than I'd expected. Valerie's forensic accountant found evidence that Derek had been inflating his expense reports for over a year. Small amounts, usually under $100, but consistent. Meals that never happened, mileage that didn't match his actual trips, supplies for the office that were never purchased. He was pocketing the difference, Valerie explained during one of our meetings. Probably $2,000 to $3,000 over the course of the year. His company could press charges if they wanted to. Would they? Depends on whether they think the publicity is worth it. But it gives us more leverage. She leaned forward, her expression sharp. "Emma, your husband painted himself into a corner. He wanted you to be invisible, to handle everything without complaint, because it left him free to build a completely separate life. He got sloppy because he thought you'd never look closely enough to notice." I almost didn't, I admitted. If he hadn't said what he said at the cookout, if Marcus hadn't called him out, I'd probably still be there. Making pot roast and pretending everything was fine. "But you're not." Valerie's tone softened slightly. "You're here. You're fighting. That takes courage." I didn't feel courageous. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean, like someone had taken everything I thought I knew about my life and revealed it as stage dressing. But I nodded anyway. The settlement negotiations began in earnest after Derek's lawyer saw the evidence package. 3 meetings over 2 weeks, each one more tense than the last. Derek wanted to settle quickly, quietly, with minimal damage to his reputation. I wanted accountability. "He's offering 70% of the joint assets," Valerie told me after the second meeting. "Including the house sale proceeds, the savings accounts, even the hidden account. He'll take on the majority of the debt. He wants this done." "What's the catch?" "You can't discuss the details of the divorce with anyone. Full non-disclosure agreement. And you have to sign a statement saying the marriage ended due to irreconcilable differences, no mention of the affair or the financial irregularities." I thought about that. 70% was more than I'd expected to get. It was enough to start over comfortably, to take my time figuring out what came next. But the silence felt like another way of making me invisible, of erasing what had happened. "Counter with 60-40, I said. "The settlement I asked for originally. But I want his admission of fault in writing, and I want it to be part of the court record. Not sealed, not hidden. Documented." Valerie raised an eyebrow. "That'll cost you the extra 10%. "I know. But I need people to know this wasn't my choice. That I didn't just wake up one day and decide to blow up my marriage for no reason." I met her eyes. "I need the truth to exist somewhere official, even if I can't talk about it." "All right," she said. "I'll present it to his lawyer." Derek fought the admission of fault for another week. His lawyer argued it was unnecessarily punitive, that it served no legal purpose, that I was just trying to humiliate him. But Valerie held firm. Finally, on a Friday afternoon, his lawyer called with Derek's acceptance. "He'll sign," Valerie told me. "Everything you asked for. The 50-50 split, the admission, the legal fees." "But Emma?" "He's asking for one meeting. Just you and him, no lawyers, before the final papers are signed. He says he needs to talk to you." "Why?" "He didn't say. You don't have to agree to it." I should have said no. I should have let the lawyers handle everything, maintained the distance I'd worked so hard to create. But some part of me needed to see him one more time, needed to hear whatever he thought he had to say. "Set it up," I told her. "Somewhere public. And I'm not going alone." We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory neither of us had been to before. Claire came with me but waited at a table across the room, her presence a tether to reality. Derek was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, 2 cups of coffee in front of him. "I got you a latte," he said when I sat down. 2 pumps vanilla, whole milk, no foam. "The way you like it." I didn't touch it. You wanted to talk? So talk. He looked terrible. Weight loss made his face gaunt, shadows lived under his eyes, his hair needed cutting. Good, some petty part of me thought. Let him suffer a little. I don't know how to start, he said finally. Try the truth. I hear it's simple. The truth is I'm an idiot. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. I had everything. A wife who loved me, who supported me, who made my life easier in 1,000 ways I didn't appreciate. And I threw it away for, he stopped. It doesn't matter what for. I threw it away. Jessica, I said. Her name is Jessica. You can say it. Jessica didn't mean anything. She was just, he saw my expression and stopped. That's not an excuse. I know that. But Emma, you have to understand, it wasn't about you. It was about me being selfish and stupid and taking advantage of the fact that you never complained, you never demanded anything, you just made everything easy, I finished. Yes, I've heard this part. You said it at the cookout. You've said it in voicemails. What do you want from me, Derek? Absolution? Permission to feel less guilty? I want you to know that I loved you. His voice cracked. I do love you. I just didn't know how to show it in a way that mattered. I thought providing, being a good husband on paper, was enough. I thought as long as I didn't actively hurt you, he laughed bitterly. But that was hurting you, wasn't it? The absence of effort. The assumption that you'd always be there, always be easy, always accept whatever scraps of attention I'd bothered to give you. I picked up a latte, just to have something to do with my hands. It was the exact temperature I preferred, cooled just enough to drink immediately. He'd remembered. After everything, he'd remembered this one small thing. It made me angrier than anything else he'd said. You're right, I told him. That was hurting me. Every day, a little bit more, until I didn't recognize myself anymore. Until I looked in the mirror and saw someone who'd shrunk herself down to almost nothing just to fit into the space you decided I should occupy. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're sorry. I set the cup down harder than I meant to. I don't care if you loved me. Love isn't passive, Derek. Love isn't just accepting someone's existence while you go about your actual life. Love is effort and attention and choosing that person every single day. You stopped choosing me a long time ago. You just didn't bother to tell me. You're right. He dragged a hand through his hair. You're absolutely right. And I can't fix it. I can't take it back. I can't make it okay. But Emma, please, can we at least try to end this without destroying each other? The lawyers, the evidence packages, the threats about my job. You destroyed yourself, I interrupted. I just documented it. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you want to burn my entire life to the ground. I want justice. I want the truth to matter. I want people to know that when this marriage ended, it wasn't because I failed. It was because you did. I stood up. Sign the papers, Derek. Take responsibility for what you've done. And then let me go. Wait. He stood too. Just, please. Tell me there was something real. Tell me it wasn't all a lie, all those years. Tell me we had something good, at least in the beginning. I looked at him, this man I'd promised forever to, who'd made me laugh on our second date, who'd proposed on a beach at sunset, who'd cried when I walked down the aisle toward him. That Derek had existed. He'd been real. But he'd also become this Derek. The one who'd treated me like furniture. Who'd built a secret life while I kept his real life running smoothly. Who'd joked about trading me away like I had no value beyond my utility. We had something good, I said quietly. And you destroyed it. That's the truth you have to live with. I walked out before he could respond. Claire fell into step beside me, her arm around my shoulders as we left the coffee shop. I didn't look back. 3 days later, the papers were signed. Derek caved. He agreed to a 50-50 split of all marital assets, including the hidden account. He signed a document acknowledging his infidelity and accepting full responsibility for the end of the marriage. He agreed to cover all divorce-related legal fees. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue any further claims and to maintain confidentiality about the details of our divorce. The papers were finalized on a Tuesday morning in August, 4 months after the cookout. I signed them in Valerie's office, my hands steady. Claire stood beside me, her presence a silent support. How do you feel? She asked afterward. Lighter, I said. And it was true. The weight I'd been carrying, the constant second-guessing, the emotional labor of keeping Derek happy, the exhausting effort of being low maintenance had lifted. I wasn't carrying it anymore. And I never would again. But there was also grief, sharp and unexpected. Grief for the marriage I thought I had, for the partnership I believed in, for the version of myself who had walked into that relationship with hope and trust. She was gone now, replaced by someone harder, more cautious, scarred in ways that might never fully heal. It's okay to be sad, Claire said as we walked to the car. Even when you know you made the right choice. Even when you're relieved it's over. You can grieve what you thought you had. I don't want to grieve him, I said. He doesn't deserve it. You're not grieving him. You're grieving you. The you who believed in happy endings. She squeezed my hand. And that's allowed. That's human. I cried in the car on the way home. Not because I wanted Derek back, but because Claire was right. I was mourning the person I'd been before the cookout, before the evidence, before the awful clarity of understanding exactly how little I'd mattered to the person who'd promised to cherish me. That night, I started writing this post. Just for myself at first, a way to process everything that had happened. But somewhere around the third paragraph, I realized other people might need to read it. Other people who were making themselves small, who were accepting less, who were being treated as optional in their own lives. So I kept writing. And when I finished, I posted it. Update 2. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. I'm writing this last update because people keep asking what happened next, whether I'm okay, whether there's more to the story. Here's the truth, life after Derek has been quieter than I expected. Not in a bad way. In a way that feels like I can finally breathe. I moved out of Claire's place 2 months after the divorce. Used my settlement money to rent a small townhouse on the other side of the city, far from the neighborhood Derek and I had shared. It has a tiny backyard where I've started a garden. Tomatoes, herbs, some flowers. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. The first few weeks in the townhouse were strange. I'd wake up disoriented, reaching for Derek out of habit before remembering he wasn't there. The silence felt heavy. I'd spent 8 years sharing space with someone, adjusting to his rhythms, his presence. Being alone required relearning how to exist. I started small. Breakfast for one. Coffee the way I actually liked it, not the way Derek preferred. I bought throw pillows in colors I'd always loved but never used because they clashed with his aesthetic. Bright teal, coral pink, patterns that made me smile. I hung art on the walls, quirky pieces from local artists, nothing that matched, nothing that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. Derek had always wanted our house to look like something out of a catalog. Minimalist, neutral, impressive. I'd spent hours arranging and rearranging furniture to meet his standards, hiding anything too personal or colorful. Now, my living room looked like an explosion of personality. It was cluttered and warm and entirely mine. The second month, I started reaching out to old friends. People I'd lost touch with during the marriage, women from college and my first job who drifted away as I'd poured more energy into being Derek's wife. I was nervous making those calls, uncertain if they'd want to hear from me after years of silence. But Sarah answered on the first ring. We'd been roommates in college, close as sisters, until I'd started dating Derek and gradually disappeared from her life. Emma, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I've been wondering when you'd call. You knew? Mutual friends saw your Facebook status change. I wanted to reach out, but I wasn't sure you'd want to hear from me. She paused. I'm sorry about your marriage. But honestly? I'm not sorry you're free of him. You didn't like Derek? I didn't like who you became around him. You were always trying to be smaller, quieter, less. It hurt to watch. Her voice softened. But that's over now. So when can we get coffee? We met the next week. Then again the week after. Sarah brought her wife Maya, and Maya brought her sister, and suddenly I had a group. Women who laughed too loud and ordered dessert without apologizing and talked about their lives with enthusiasm and complaint in equal measure. Women who took up space unapologetically. I'd forgotten what that felt like. To be around people who didn't make you feel like existing was an inconvenience. Through Sarah, I reconnected with others. Nina, who'd been my mentor at my first job and who'd been disappointed when I'd turned down that promotion to stay with Derek. Jenna, who'd stopped inviting me to girls' nights after I canceled too many times because Derek needed me home. They welcomed me back without judgment, without I told you so's, just genuine happiness that I'd found my way out. You look different, Nina said during one of our lunches. More alive. I feel different, I admitted. Like I've been asleep for years and just woke up. So what are you going to do now that you're awake? That question stayed with me. What was I going to do? For 8 years, my life had revolved around Derek's needs, Derek's schedule, Derek's ambitions. I'd supported his career advancement, his networking events, his hobbies. I'd sublimated my own goals so completely that I'd almost forgotten I had any. But I did have them. Dreams I'd set aside, interests I'd neglected, ambitions I'd convinced myself were impractical. I wanted to learn landscape design, maybe start a small business eventually. I wanted to travel, see places Derek had never been interested in visiting. I wanted to write, not just this post, but maybe articles, essays, a blog about starting over. I enrolled in classes at the community college. Introduction to Landscape Architecture, Creative Writing, Small Business Management. 3 nights a week, I sat in classrooms with people of all ages, all backgrounds, all starting or restarting different chapters of their lives. It felt good to be a beginner again, to raise my hand with questions, to struggle with assignments, to learn. My landscape design professor, Dr. Chen, was a woman in her 60s who'd started her own firm after her divorce in her 40s. Best decision I ever made, she told the class during introductions. Leaving a marriage that was suffocating me, starting over from scratch. Terrifying and liberating in equal measure. After class, I approached her. Can I ask you something? Did you ever regret it? Leaving, I mean. Starting over so late. She smiled. Not once. I regretted staying as long as I did, wasting years on someone who didn't value me. But leaving? Never. My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. She studied my face. Recent divorce? 4 months. Then you're right on time. The first year is hard. The second is better. By the third, you won't recognize your old life. You'll wonder how you ever accepted it. She patted my shoulder. Stay with it. The discomfort means you're growing. The house Derek and I owned sold quickly. The market was good, and neither of us fought over it. We split the profit down the middle, just like everything else. I heard through mutual friends that Derek bought a condo downtown, something modern and expensive. I didn't care. I stopped caring about what Derek does around the time I signed the final papers. But I did hear things, through the grapevine of shared acquaintances. Shannon, Tim's wife from the softball league, reached out to me in September. We met for coffee. She wanted to apologize for not speaking up at the cookout. I knew something was wrong, she said, stirring her latte absently. The way Derek talked about you, the way he'd make jokes at your expense and look around for approval. Tim and I argued about it more than once. I wanted to say something, but Tim said it wasn't our place, that every couple has their dynamic. It's okay, I told her. I wouldn't have listened anyway. Not then? Well, I want you to know I'm sorry. And I'm glad you got out. She hesitated. Derek's not doing well. Jessica broke up with him about a month after your divorce finalized. Apparently, she thought dating a divorced man would be exciting, but the reality was messier than she expected. He's been showing up to softball games drunk, making everyone uncomfortable. Tim's thinking of asking him to leave the team. I felt nothing when she told me that. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even pity. Just nothing. He was someone I used to know, someone who'd hurt me, someone I'd left behind. The company investigation found enough irregularities in Derek's expense reports to warrant a formal reprimand, but not termination. He's still at his job, still doing whatever it is insurance brokers do. His reputation took a hit, though. Word got around about the divorce, about why it happened. Professional circles are smaller than people think. Jason, Derek's friend from the cookout, reached out to me in October. The message came through Facebook, brief and awkward. Emma, I know we weren't close, but I wanted to apologize for not saying anything that day. Derek was out of line. You didn't deserve that. I hope you're doing okay. I appreciated the gesture, even if it came months too late. But it made me wonder how many people had known. How many had seen the patterns, noticed the way Derek treated me, and said nothing because it wasn't their business or because they didn't want to rock the boat. How complicit silence could be. I ran into him once, 3 months ago. I was at the grocery store, picking up ingredients for dinner, when I turned a corner and there he was. Older, somehow. Tired. He was staring at the pasta selection like it held the secrets of the universe. Emma, he said when he saw me. Derek. We stood there for a moment, two people who used to share a life, now strangers in a supermarket aisle. You look good, he said finally. Thanks. Are you seeing anyone? That's not your business anymore. I kept my voice neutral, not cruel, just honest. He nodded. Yeah. I know. He hesitated. I'm sorry. For everything. I was awful to you. I didn't see it until you were gone, but I was awful. Yes, you were. Do you think? He trailed off, then tried again. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I considered that. Did I forgive him? I wasn't sure. Forgiveness felt like something you gave when someone had genuinely changed, when they understood the harm they'd caused and worked to repair it. Derek had apologized, but I didn't know if he'd actually changed. And more importantly, I didn't need to know. I hope you figure yourself out, I said instead. I hope you learn how to treat people better. But whether I forgive you or not isn't something I'm thinking about anymore. I walked away before he could respond. My hands were shaking when I got to my car, but not from fear or anger. From the realization that I'd meant every word. Derek wasn't a central figure in my story anymore. He was just a chapter I closed. Marcus and I are friends now. Real friends, not just friendly neighbors. He helped me move into the townhouse, showed up with his truck and a couple of guys from his office. We have coffee sometimes, talk about work and life and the weird process of starting over in middle age. He's been on a few dates. So have I nothing serious yet, on either side, but it's been nice to remember what it feels like to be treated with genuine respect. To have someone listen when I talk, to be asked about my opinions and preferences, to be seen as a complete person instead of a supporting character in someone else's life. My first date after the divorce was with a man named Joel, someone Sarah set me up with. He was perfectly nice, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and a self-deprecating sense of humor. We met for dinner at a casual Italian place, talked about books and movies, shared a tiramisu for dessert. But when he walked me to my car and asked if he could see me again, I panicked. My heart started racing, my palms went sweaty, and I heard myself making excuses about being busy with school and needing time to adjust to single life. He was gracious about it, said to call him if I changed my mind, but I could see the disappointment in his face. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after he left, trying to understand what had just happened. Joel was nice. He'd been respectful, interested, engaging. Everything Derek hadn't been. So why did the thought of seeing him again fill me with dread? I called Claire on the drive home. I think I'm broken, I told her. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. Joel was perfect. He was everything I should want. But all I could think about was how I'd have to explain my life to him, my divorce, Derek. How I'd have to be vulnerable again with someone who could just hurt me the same way. So you're not ready. That's okay, Emma. You've been divorced for 4 months. You're allowed to not be ready. But it bothered me. I'd left Derek, filed for divorce, fought for what I was owed. I'd been so strong through all of it. Why was this, a simple date with a nice man, so terrifying? Dr. Chen, my landscape design professor, recommended a therapist. Divorce is trauma, she said simply. Even when it's the right choice. Especially when it's the right choice, because you're mourning not just what you lost but what you thought you had. You need someone to help you process that. So I started seeing Dr. Patterson, a therapist who specialized in life transitions and relationship trauma. Once a week, I sat in her comfortable office and talked about Derek, about the marriage, about the version of myself I'd lost somewhere along the way. You mentioned you gave up a promotion to stay with Derek, Dr. Patterson said during one session. Tell me about that. I'd almost forgotten about it. 5 years ago, I'd been working as an administrative coordinator at a marketing firm. They'd offered me a position as regional manager, better title, significant pay increase, real advancement potential. The catch was it required relocating to Boston for 2 years. Derek said we couldn't do it, I told Dr. Patterson. He'd just gotten his insurance license, was building his client base. He said it wasn't fair to ask him to start over in a new city, that we needed to think about our future as a couple, not just my career. How did you feel when he said that? Disappointed. But he was right, wasn't he? Marriage is about compromise. You can't both chase your dreams at the same time. Except Derek did chase his dreams. He focused on his career, his advancement, his networking. Where was your compromise? I hadn't thought about it that way. I guess. I thought making him happy was my contribution. Supporting his career, managing our home, being the person who made everything easy so he could succeed. And what about your success? Your happiness? I didn't have an answer. Over the following weeks, Dr. Patterson helped me see the patterns I'd fallen into. The way I'd learned to read Derek's moods, anticipate his needs, adjust my behavior to avoid conflict. The way I convinced myself that being accommodating was the same as being loving, that making myself smaller was generosity rather than self-erasure. What you're describing is called hypervigilance, she explained. It's common in relationships where one person holds most of the power. You learn to constantly monitor Derek's emotions because your peace depended on keeping him content. That's exhausting, Emma. No wonder you're tired. The therapy sessions were hard. I cried through most of them, confronting truths I'd been avoiding for years. But they also brought clarity. Understanding why I'd stayed so long, why I'd accepted so little, why the thought of dating again felt impossible. You need to rebuild trust, Dr. Patterson said. Not with someone else. With yourself. You need to trust that you'll notice red flags next time. That you'll speak up when something feels wrong. That you'll choose yourself when you need to. It was during this time that my friendship with Marcus deepened. He'd been seeing his own therapist since his divorce, working through similar issues of self-worth and trust. We'd compare notes sometimes, laugh at the similar homework our therapists assigned, commiserate about how hard it was to unlearn old patterns. My therapist says I have a tendency to abandon my own needs in relationships, Marcus told me one evening. We were sitting on my patio, watching the sun set, 2 glasses of lemonade sweating on the table between us. I make myself indispensable by being endlessly accommodating, and then I resent the other person for taking advantage of what I've offered. That sounds familiar, I said. The thing is, I knew my ex-wife was treating me badly. I saw it. But I kept thinking if I just tried harder, was better, more understanding, she'd realize what she had. She'd change. He shook his head. But people don't change because you sacrifice yourself. They change because they want to. Or they don't change at all. How do you date after that? I asked. How do you trust someone new when the person you trusted most broke that trust? Honestly? I don't know yet. I'm figuring it out as I go. He looked at me. But I think it starts with trusting yourself. Believing you'll recognize the warning signs. Having faith that you won't ignore your instincts next time. That's what my therapist says. Smart woman. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus said, I want to tell you something. That day at the cookout, when I confronted Derek, I wasn't planning it. But when he said what he said about you, something just snapped. I saw my ex-wife's face. Heard her voice making those same kinds of jokes at my expense. And I couldn't stay silent. I know. I could see it. I'm sorry if I made things harder for you. If I pushed you into a decision you weren't ready for. You didn't push me into anything, I said firmly. You held up a mirror. What I saw in it was my choice to deal with. And I'm grateful you did. I might have stayed years longer otherwise, convincing myself it wasn't that bad. It was that bad, though? What he said. What he'd been doing. Yes, I agreed. It was. Another silence. Then, I went on a date last week. First one in 6 months. How did it go? Terrible. I spent the whole time comparing her to my ex, looking for red flags, waiting for her to say something cruel or dismissive. She was perfectly nice, and I was a nervous wreck, he laughed ruefully. She probably thinks I'm insane. I had the same experience. Nice guy, complete gentleman, and I couldn't handle it. So what do we do? Just accept that we're going to be single forever, too damaged for relationships? I hope not, I said. I don't want Derek to have that much power over my future. Me neither. We clinked our lemonade glasses together, a toast to healing, to trying, to the messy process of becoming whole again. By November, I completed my first semester of classes with solid grades. My landscape design project, a proposal for a community garden in an underutilized city lot, earned praise from Dr. Chen. This is professional level work, she said. Have you thought about pursuing this seriously? I had, actually. Late at night, lying in bed, I'd imagine having my own business someday. Something small, sustainable, focused on creating outdoor spaces that brought people joy. Nothing as ambitious as Derek's career aspirations, but something that was mine. Something that reflected who I was becoming, not who I'd been trained to be. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping maintain their garden, teaching kids about plants and soil and growth. It was messy and exhausting and wonderful. The kids asked endless questions, got dirt everywhere, accidentally uprooted seedlings they were supposed to be watering. But their enthusiasm was infectious, their joy at watching things grow reminded me why I'd wanted to do this in the first place. One of the kids, a 10-year-old named Maya, reminded me of myself at that age. Quiet, watchful, eager to please. She'd always wanted to do things perfectly, would get visibly upset if she made a mistake. I saw myself in her caution, her fear of taking up too much space. It's okay to make mistakes here, I told her one afternoon. We were planting tulip bulbs, preparing the garden for spring. Plants are forgiving. So are people, if they're good people. But what if I do it wrong? Then we'll learn together. There's no perfect way to plant a bulb, Maya. You put it in the ground, cover it with soil, water it, and hope. Sometimes it grows. Sometimes it doesn't. That's life. She looked at me with solemn brown eyes. Were you scared when you started learning about gardens? Terrified, I admitted. I was scared of failing, of wasting time, of people thinking I was silly for trying something new. But you know what? Being scared was better than staying stuck. She nodded slowly, then planted her bulb with more confidence. Teaching her, watching her gain courage, felt like teaching myself. Every lesson I gave was a lesson I needed to learn. Be patient with your mistakes. Take up the space you need. Trust in your ability to grow. You're different, Marcus said last week. We were sitting on my back patio, watching the sunset behind the neighbor's fence. From when you first moved in next door. More present, somehow. I was half asleep back then, I admitted. Going through the motions. Being who I thought I was supposed to be. And now? Now I'm just me. Figuring out what that means. I smiled. It's harder than I thought it would be. But better. He nodded. Yeah. It is. The wildflowers I'd planted in early fall were dormant now, preparing for winter. But I'd learned enough in my classes to know they were still growing, just beneath the surface. Sending down deeper roots, storing energy, getting ready for spring. Sometimes growth looks like stillness. Sometimes you have to go dormant to survive. December brought the first snow. I woke up to find my tiny backyard transformed, blanketed in white, peaceful and clean. I made coffee, stood at the window watching flakes drift down, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, contentment. Not happiness, that felt too big, too precarious. But contentment. Satisfaction with where I was, even knowing I had further to go. Claire came over for dinner that night. We made pasta from scratch, something I'd never done with Derek because he said boxed pasta was just as good and why waste time, and drank wine and laughed about terrible first dates and family drama and all the small absurdities of life. I'm proud of you, she said as we were cleaning up. For walking away. For fighting for yourself. For building this. She gestured around the kitchen, at the mismatched dishes and colorful art and all the evidence of a life being lived authentically. I'm proud of me too, I said. And meant it. Ralph called me in January. Derek's uncle, the one who'd laughed at the cookout, who'd later called to apologize. His voice on the phone was tentative. Emma, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from Marcus. It's fine. What's up? I wanted you to know that I've been going to meetings. For drinking. It's been 3 months sober. He paused. Losing Linda, seeing what happened with you and Derek, it made me take a hard look at myself. At the man I'd become. And I didn't like what I saw. That takes courage, I said softly. I'm trying. But the reason I'm calling, Derek's been coming to some of the meetings. He's struggling, Emma. With a divorce, with losing Jessica, with feeling like he destroyed his life. I'm not asking you to forgive him or take him back or anything like that. But I thought you should know he's trying to change. I'm glad he's getting help, I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted Derek back, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of his suffering. But Ralph, his healing isn't my responsibility. Just like my healing isn't his. I know. I wanted you to know he understands now. What he lost. What he did wrong. Then I hope that understanding helps him treat the next person better. I looked out my kitchen window at the snow-covered garden. That's all any of us can do. Learn from our mistakes and do better next time. After we hung up, I sat with the information for a while. Derek was in recovery. Derek was struggling. Derek understood what he'd lost. Part of me, a very small part, felt vindicated. He got what he deserved. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of carrying anger, tired of wishing him ill, tired of giving him any space in my head at all. I called Dr. Patterson and scheduled an extra session. We talked about closure, about forgiveness, about what it meant to truly move on. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, she said. It doesn't mean excusing what he did. It just means releasing the hold that anger has on you. You can acknowledge the harm while refusing to let it define your future. How do I do that? You're already doing it. Every day you choose yourself, every time you set a boundary, every moment you build a life that reflects your values, that's how. Forgiveness isn't one grand gesture. It's 1,000 small choices to let go. I thought about that as I drove home. Forgiveness is a practice, not an event. Maybe I'd never fully forgive Derek. Maybe I didn't need to. But I could choose, every day, not to let what he'd done consume me. I could choose to focus on what I was building rather than what I'd lost. The landscape design program accepted me for the following fall. I'd applied on a whim, not really believing I'd get in, but my portfolio, filled with projects from my community college classes, photos from the community center garden, detailed plans for residential outdoor spaces, had impressed the admissions committee. "We see a lot of applicants with technical skills," the program director told me during my interview. "But you have something else. Heart. You understand that landscape design isn't just about aesthetics. It's about creating spaces where people can grow." I called Claire first, then Sarah, then Marcus. They all celebrated with me, proud and unsurprised. "Of course you got in," Marcus said. "You're talented, Emma. You're just finally letting yourself believe it." Classes would start in September. Until then, I had time. Time to work, to save money, to keep volunteering, to keep learning. Time to keep growing, like the wildflowers dormant in my garden, sending down roots, preparing for bloom. Valentine's Day came and went without incident. Last year, Derek had given me those earrings, the ones that cost less than what he'd spent on jewelry for Jessica. This year, I bought myself flowers. Bright, chaotic wildflowers from the same nursery where I'd bought my garden plants. I put them in a vase on my kitchen table and smiled every time I walked past them. Sarah invited me to an anti-Valentine's party, single women celebrating independence and friendship over wine and dessert. I went, expecting to feel bitter or sad, but instead I felt grateful. Grateful for these women, for this life, for the freedom to choose how I spent my time and energy. "To being unattached," Nina said, raising her glass. "To being attached to ourselves first," I countered, and everyone drank to that. Joel, the history teacher I'd gone on one awkward date with, reached out again in March. "I know last time was weird," his text said. "But I wondered if you'd want to try again. No pressure. Just coffee." I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to say no, to protect myself, to avoid the risk. But Dr. Patterson's words echoed in my head. "Trust yourself. Believe you'll recognize red flags. Have faith in your ability to choose well." "Coffee sounds nice," I texted back. We met on a Sunday afternoon. The conversation was easier this time, less fraught with my anxiety. He talked about his students, his love of historical fiction, his recent trip to visit his sister. I talked about my classes, the community garden, my plans for the design program. "You seem more relaxed than last time," he observed. "I am. Last time I was terrified." "Of me?" "Of everything. Of letting someone in. Of being hurt again. Of choosing wrong." I stirred my coffee. "I'm still nervous. But I'm not terrified anymore." "That's good," he said with a gentle smile. "Because I'd like to see you again, if you're open to it." I was. Not because Joel was perfect or because I was completely healed, but because I was ready to try. Ready to see where something might go without carrying the weight of Derek's betrayal into every interaction. We went on 3 more dates. Then 5. Then I stopped counting. Joel was patient with my boundaries, respectful when I needed space, honest about his own past hurts and fears. We moved slowly, carefully, 2 people learning to trust again. "Is this what healthy looks like?" I asked Marcus one evening. We still had our regular coffee dates, still compared notes on therapy and healing in the strange landscape of dating after divorce. "I think so." "Does it feel healthy?" "It feels like I'm an equal partner. Like my opinion matters. Like I can say no without consequence." I smiled. "Yeah. I think it's healthy." "Good. You deserve that." Claire says I should write a book about all of this. Other women need to hear this story, she tells me. They need to know it's possible to leave. That you can survive it. That you can build something new. Maybe she's right. But for now, I'm just focusing on the garden, on the townhouse, on the quiet life I'm creating. I'm taking classes at the community college, studying landscape design. I'm reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage. I'm learning to take up space again, to voice opinions, to exist without constantly monitoring someone else's mood. Last week, I went to a plant nursery and spent 2 hours picking out flowers for the garden. The woman who helped me asked what I was looking for, and I realized I didn't know. I'd always bought plants Derek liked, colors that matched his preferences. "What do you like?" she asked. It took me a minute to answer. Then I pointed to a section of bright, chaotic wildflowers. Those. I like those. She smiled. Good choice. They're resilient. They grow just about anywhere, and they come back stronger every year. I bought 3 flats of them. Planted them along the back fence where they'd get full sun. They're blooming now, a riot of color and life, proof that something beautiful can grow from scorched earth. Derek texted me last month. Just once, late at night. I miss you. I miss us. Did we ever have a chance? I thought about that question for a long time before I answered. We had every chance, I wrote back. You just didn't value what you had until it was gone. I hope you learned from that. Then I deleted his number. Not out of anger, but out of a simple recognition that I didn't need it anymore. Whatever Derek learned or didn't learn, whatever he became or didn't become, wasn't my responsibility. I'd spent 8 years taking responsibility for his happiness, for his comfort, for his ego. I was done with that job. So that's where I am now. 6 months out, building a life that's entirely my own. It's smaller than the life I had with Derek, at least in terms of the house, the bank account, the social status. But it's bigger in every way that matters. Bigger in freedom, in authenticity, in peace. People ask if I'm angry. If I hate Derek. If I wake up bitter and resentful. The truth is, I don't think about him enough to hate him. He's a cautionary tale I tell myself sometimes, a reminder of what I won't accept again. But he's not the villain of my story anymore. He's just a man who didn't know how to value what he had, who made choices that cost him everything, who has to live with those consequences. And me? I'm the woman who walked away from the cookout. Who chose herself? Who learned that being low maintenance was just another way of being invisible? Who discovered that the right person doesn't trade you away in jokes or reality, they hold on to you like you're precious, because you are. I'm the woman who built a garden from scratch, who planted wildflowers, who learned to take up space. I'm the woman who survived. And that's enough. A final thought. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, if you're the person who makes everything easy, who never complains, who shrinks to fit someone else's idea of who you should be, please hear this: you deserve more than tolerance. You deserve more than someone who appreciates your usefulness. You deserve to be cherished for who you are, not what you provide. Walking away is terrifying. Starting over feels impossible. But living half alive, half visible, half valued is worse. It's a slow erosion of everything you are until you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself anymore. You are not a dishwasher. You are not a servant. You are not low-maintenance background noise in someone else's story. You are a complete, complex, valuable human being who deserves to be treated as such. It took me 8 years and a humiliating backyard cookout to learn that lesson. I hope it doesn't take you that long. I hope you look at the wildflowers, chaotic, resilient, beautiful, and remember that's what you are too. Something that deserves to grow in full sun, to take up space, to bloom without apology. And if you need to walk away to do that, walk away. The garden you plant on the other side will be worth every difficult step.